Conflict. We've all faced it at one time or another, whether it's with your parents, a partner, a sibling, friends, direct reports and co-workers. And dealing with it can be difficult, but not something you should ignore. And when it's part of your job, well, the stakes just get higher and higher. Sustained unresolved conflict can create tension, whether at home or at work, and is capable of eroding your relationships. Research has also shown that the stress of repetitive and prolonged conflict has strong associations with any number of health issues, not least the weakening of your immune system. What then creates conflict, and what can you do to resolve it? Hello, Lesley Hornsby here. Welcome to my channel. Here I talk about and teach people like you some really effective NLP techniques. There's some life coaching tips, and from my 20 odd years of training personal development, I sometimes delve into some of the skills that you can use to become a great communicator. And if you'd like to know more, then please just hit subscribe and you'll get future videos on a regular basis. And if you think life coaching might help, I'm more than happy to talk things through with you. All you need to do is just use the link below to make an obligation-free telephone appointment with me. So how and why do we get into conflict anyway? Well, it can be any number of things and is almost always driven by emotion. Perhaps egos clashing, there's an issue of jealousy, competitive tensions, some kind of power struggle, or just someone's having a bad day. Emotions running high is part of the story. The other part is poor communication. So when trying to resolve conflict, you need to address both of those things. The ideal, of course, is to avoid conflict in the first place, but as we well know, human beings are unpredictable and often highly emotional, so that it can be easier said than done. With this in mind, I'm going to talk you through some strategies that will help you to resolve conflict using both basic communication skills as well as a number of NLP techniques. Okay, so particularly in a work setting, poor communication is a primary cause of conflict, whether it's a lack of information, no information, or possibly misinformation. When presented with only half the picture, for instance, where some of the information is missing, we as people instinctively start to construct our own interpretation, make assumptions or jump to conclusions and generalizations. Now, I've come across this in business where, for example, organizational changes were poorly communicated to the workforce. That created uncertainty and even fear among people. The rumor mill gathered momentum very quickly, and the more disenfranchised and resentful people became, the less productive they were, and of course employee turnover skyrocketed. This is a classic example of what happens in times of conflict. Emotion drives the agenda. More rational responses are superseded by unhelpful reactions such as anger and resentment, which can reduce those who are locked in conflict into scaremongering, petty tit-for-tat behaviour and misinformation, depending on the circumstances. If this arises in a work setting and you are responsible for arbitrating tensions between co-workers, all of these factors are important for you to take into account. You need to be able to regard the conflict with an unbiased and unemotional viewpoint and explore the origins of the conflict, not only to get a true understanding of its source, but also to enable you to strategize the appropriate route to resolution. As a starting point, it may be helpful to interview each co-worker privately and build a picture of exactly what's going on. So, what should you be doing and how do you get the ball rolling? First off, when approaching a situation where emotions may be running high, it's useful to allow people to have their say. Now, it's really tempting to want to shut people down when they're on a rant. And this is a common experience for those working in a customer-facing role, such as a call centre, where customers may be calling in with a problem, or you're responsible for fielding telephone complaints. Whatever the context, it's important to acknowledge the validity of someone's emotions, whether they're angry, frustrated, or just generally upset. It'll usually be very clear that they have something that they want to get off their chest. And in that situation, the most effective response is to let it run its course. This is because A key stressor for people is when they feel they are not being heard. If you're arbitrating, it's a good opportunity to begin to pick through the emotional white noise and identify the source of the conflict. This was evident during some change management sessions I was asked to run for an organisation that had acquired a number of businesses. These acquisitions had led to the need for a massive internal restructure. However, it was handled so poorly by the organisation's C-suite. There was frankly zero consultation with workers. People were arbitrarily moved, both physically and in relation to their work scope, with no warning or even explanation. On many occasions, the start of the change management workshops always began with attendees desperate to vent their frustration and fears, which, whilst it didn't necessarily change their circumstances, helped to ease their emotional distress, because they felt at least someone was listening and acknowledging the validity of their concerns. So maybe you're doing a one-to-one and you're facing anger and heightened emotions, and it can often be quite an uncomfortable experience. But by allowing the other person space to vent, it gives you the opportunity, firstly, to gather your own composure, as well as affording you the chance to listen carefully. There's a very good chance, if you follow closely, that they're going to reveal the crux of their concerns, even if that's not immediately apparent. Now, you may look for ways to pacify when faced with an emotionally charged situation. And whilst this may be useful, in your eagerness to lower the temperature of the conversation, you may find that you lose sight or disregard the other person's point of view. This may even seem as if you're trivialising their feelings, which of course will likely only serve to fuel the conflict. The key here then is to be clear that you recognise that the other person finds the situation, whatever it might be, problematic. To help you achieve this, you can adopt an NLP technique called perceptual positions. And this is just a fancy term for looking at a problem or conflict from another angle, one of which is the second position, in other words, from the other person's point of view. Now, some of us naturally consider the needs and concerns of others. For those more centrally focused, adopting another person's view can be something of a challenge. Perceptual positions work whether you're embroiled in a conflict or not. But if you're arbitrating, then it's a case of asking each party in the conflict to firstly talk about the conflict or problem from their own point of view. That's known as the first position. And when and where they're fully associated with the problem. To help them with this, you should ask things like, what's happening? What are you seeing, hearing, or feeling? Where is your focus? You then make them break state, which just means step out of that viewpoint and role, and then get them to adopt a character and imagine that they're the other person. That's your second position, and ask the same questions. What would you be seeing, hearing, or thinking, or feeling, etc., if you were the other person? What is going on for them as that other person? With any luck, the perceptual positioning will help people draw new insights when they move to a second position, seeing things from another point of view. Now, to further the exercise, you could facilitate an independent view known as the third position, which means observing the interactions between the two people. And this third position encourages impartial insight that is grounded in neither of the sometimes passionate views of either party. Let's talk about empathy. Now, by empathising, which doesn't mean you have to agree or capitulate, you can help to reduce any tensions that's driving the conflict. Adopting a non-defensive, open demeanour will assist you in finding a resolution. Also, think about using I statements. They indicate that you can see why they're upset. For example, I can see this issue is troubling you. Let's talk about what we can do to improve things. This is also where an NLP technique called reframing comes in particularly something called an outcome frame. The outcome frame is a set of questions you can ask to orientate the other person's thinking so that they can focus their thinking in terms of desired outcomes. This technique can be useful in breaking the cycle of both parties wanting to cover old ground in order to be able to apportion blame. With any luck, the perceptual positioning will help people draw new insights when they move to a second position, seeing things from another point of view. Now, to further the exercise, you could facilitate an independent view known as the third position, which means observing the interactions between the two people. And this third position encourages impartial insight that is grounded in neither of the sometimes passionate views of either party. Let's talk about empathy. Now, by empathising, which doesn't mean you have to agree or capitulate, you can help to reduce any tensions that's driving the conflict. Adopting a non-defensive, open demeanour will assist you in finding a resolution. Also, think about using I statements. They indicate that you can see why they're upset. For example, I can see this issue is troubling you. Let's talk about what we can do to improve things. This is also where an NLP technique called reframing comes in particularly something called an outcome frame. The outcome frame is a set of questions you can ask to orientate the other person's thinking so that they can focus their thinking in terms of desired outcomes. This technique can be useful in breaking the cycle of both parties wanting to cover old ground in order to be able to apportion blame. Another NLP-related consideration is to understand the positive intention of the other person. NLP practitioners believe we all operate from a position of best intent. It's not always immediately obvious, it's true, because people in conflict get bogged down in detail. But behind that is the higher positive intention on both sides of the argument. What it is that each party really desires. Is it respect, love, security? Understanding this will put you in a much better position to form a strategy to resolve the conflict. So, for example, if someone is in conflict because they feel undervalued at work, their overriding higher desire is to feel their work has value and is recognised as such. So having set aside charged emotions and used outcome reframes to unpick and identify exactly from where the conflict stems, you can then close in on the higher intention. And once those are established, try asking questions like, what would you need to change to help you? Try to establish what impact it's having by asking, what is it that's causing you to feel undervalued? If there are several individuals involved, then you might choose to meet each participant separately in order to question them about the situation, gather their individual views so that you can then begin to formulate a proposed remedy. Now, it's very human to want to attribute blame, establish who's right or wrong. The primary goal of resolving conflict is, of course, to find a solution that both parties find acceptable. Part of establishing the cause of conflict is not to immediately come up with solutions, but first to take time to focus on need. Try asking, what would be your ideal outcome? Or why do you believe that that will make things better? These kinds of questions help you get to the heart of why someone's upset or dissatisfied with the status quo. Finding out what someone needs to put you in a much better, stronger position to offer acceptable solutions. If the conflict is particularly entrenched, even if you've addressed it and alleviated it to a point, in some cases it may be important to follow up. Conflict resolution is not a comfortable ask, and many people shy away from going beyond a single conversation. However, to ensure the problem is fully resolved, you should consider following up sometime afterwards in order to gauge if the matter has really been put to bed. I hope you find the points that I've covered in today's video useful in dealing with conflict, whether it's at home or at work. And if you've had any experience of conflict resolution, be it good or bad, I'd love to hear about it, so please do leave a comment below. And if you think you might like to try some live coaching sessions and experience how NLP really works to help with mental blocks, phobias, limiting beliefs, whatever it is, then all you've got to do is use the link that I've added below, and you'll be able to get in touch and make a 30-minute appointment with me for just a preliminary obligation-free chat. And for the NLP enthusiasts, I've included a free guide to 3 brilliant NLP techniques you might like to look at. So there's just a link below to download the PDF for that. Don't forget to click subscribe to this YouTube channel to get these videos. I post each and every week. And I hope you can join me again next time for more on some of NLP's cutting-edge processes and techniques designed to help you lead a more fulfilling life. In the meantime, thanks again for your company. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.